Hey Mom, just let us know when you kick the bucket. We need the money fast.
Scott is the oldest, so your inheritance belongs to us. I've always hated you. Such a boring old hag, always so serious.
Yeah, a truly boring mom she was.
It's said that the human hearing functions until the moment of death. Imagine hearing such words at your final hour. Horrifying. Fury overcame me and I stood up, slapping Scott across the face. Let's go back about a year ago. My name is Alice. My husband Samuel and I weren't blessed with children, but we lived happily as a couple. Our life was nothing but peace. Both of us were gentle and never quarreled. We had no expensive hobbies, leading to tranquil days. But then, one day, that peace was shattered. My mother, living at her home, fell ill. My father, who was a well-known executive of a major corporation, passed away a few years ago, and my mother lives alone in her home. We had no children, so we had often asked her to live with us, but she always refused, saying, "I'm okay, I can still live on my own." But now, due to this illness, she was almost bedridden and would have to remain hospitalized unless someone took care of her. Scott, my older brother, vehemently refused to care for her. Scott and his wife Karen had a young child, so I could understand their refusal. The only ones left who could take care of her were Samuel and me. I braced myself for a divorce or separation and asked Samuel, "Please, Samuel, I want my mom to live in her home, where so many memories of my dad still linger, for as long as she can move. Please let me go home and take care of her." At my desperate plea, Samuel seemed surprised at first, but then he smiled gently.
Well, if that's the case, maybe we should sell this house. It's just a rental, and if your mother-in-law is okay with us living with her, we won't need this house anymore.
Huh? Are you coming with me, Samuel?
Of course, I'm your husband, Alice. I want to live under the same roof with you always.
Tears welled up by Samuel's words. I was so happy to be married to such a kind person. I was truly blessed. My mother found it hard to walk, and she became less and less capable of eating and using the bathroom by herself. Samuel, without any complaints, worked hard with me to take care of her. Our mother was pleased with gentle Samuel. While chatting, she would say every day, "Alice is truly fortunate to be married to a man like Samuel." The progression of my mother's illness was much faster than we or the doctors had thought. With each new thing she became unable to do, she would be filled with sadness and occasionally take out her frustration on us. Each time she would apologize and cry. Seeing her in such pain, all I could do was say, "It's okay, you'll be alright," and cry with her. By the time Christmas approached, she had lost the ability to converse properly. Her speech had become so impaired that she could only communicate through writing. Missing her bright laughter, I was feeling a touch of loneliness when my brother Scott contacted me.
"Hello, Alice. I'm planning to visit Mom for Christmas this year. It might be the last time."
"Don't say such unlucky things, but I'm happy that you'll come to see Mom. We'll be waiting for you." I had always kept my brother updated about our mother's condition via text, but he almost never replied. Even though our mother had loved us equally, I thought it was quite cruel of him. So when I heard he would be visiting for Christmas, I was truly glad. Scott and his wife Karen left their kids at Karen's parents' house and came to our home for Christmas. I thought they left their kids with Karen's parents out of consideration for our mother, but when I thanked Karen, she casually said, "Kids would just get in the way," which surprised me. Not having any kids myself, I wouldn't understand, but I thought it would be better if I never understand the feeling of calling one's own child a nuisance. Scott and Karen were entirely thinking that they were a guest. Scott entered the room next to the living room where our mother was and asked,
"Hey, still kicking?"
When our mother silently nodded, Karen said, "Doesn't it smell in here? Mom should take a bath every day." It was absurd. Even though our mother can't speak, she can hear perfectly. Due to her illness, she's lost almost all her physical abilities and can't take a bath. I wipe her body every day, but there's a certain smell specific to sick people that can't be removed. I thought they were extremely rude. After watching Scott and Karen go back to the living room saying, "Let's have a drink," I whispered to our mother, "Are you okay?" She smiled slightly and nodded. In the living room on the other side of the door, Scott was ordering to Samuel, "I'm the guest here, fetch me some booze." I could imagine Samuel, who was a timid person, hurrying to the kitchen to get the alcohol. Feeling sorry for Samuel, I went to the living room. Samuel, who was about to place a can of beer in front of Scott and Karen, looked relieved when he saw me and said, "Thanks, Alice." Scott has always been ill-tempered and doesn't get along with Samuel. His wife Karen is the same type of person. "Bring more booze," she ordered Samuel, already having emptied several cans of beer. Without saying anything about our mother recently, my brother Scott and his wife Karen only discussed how much of our father's inheritance was left, or how jealous they were of us living in our family home with no rent. Scott and Karen just seemed focused on money.
"You're making a pretty penny, aren't you, Samuel? Must be nice, Alice. You found a rich man and married him. Samuel's not even that good looking. You're just blinded by the money, right?" What? No way. Can you stop saying such unpleasant things?
Samuel, being a kind man, kept a smile on his face despite the rude comments from my brother.
Karen, too drunk by this point, says, "We don't have money because we're always drinking," and clumsily gets up. Karen, where are you going?
Instead of going to the bathroom, Karen stood up and opened the door to the room where our mother was sleeping. Karen, with a sneaky grin, said something outrageous at our mother's bedside. "Dear mother-in-law, Scott and I are in dire financial straits. Please go to heaven soon and leave us a lot of money."
That's right. It's best for our mother to pass away soon. Free Alice and Samuel.
Scott, drunk, responds to Karen's words loudly. As I was frozen in anger, Samuel, who had been smiling next to me, suddenly stood up.
"Please leave." "What? What did you say?" "Please leave. I cannot bear to host people who could say such things to a bedridden person even for a single night."
Saying this, Samuel took a few bills from his wallet and handed them to my brother.
"Get a room nearby and leave by tomorrow."
Scott and Karen looked dumbfounded, but seemed happier about receiving the money. They quickly cheered up and exclaimed, "Yay!" and left our house. I knew what kind of people Scott and Karen were, but it was my fault for inviting them into this house. When I tearfully apologized to our mother, who was making a sad face on the bed, she wrote on a memo pad she had at hand, "It's okay, I have prepared everything for after I'm gone." Samuel and I continued to care for our mother as best we could. However, we were told by a doctor that it was becoming difficult for her to continue living at home. She started to become more vacant throughout the day and began asking the same questions over and over, even in hand. Just as the doctor suggested, we decided to admit her to the hospital. Still, Samuel and I visited her almost daily. We messaged Scott to inform him that Mom may not have much time left, but it was only read and ignored. Our mother began to fade, and the time to say goodbye was drawing near. It happened on a summer morning. When my smartphone rang, I already had a bad feeling. The call was from the hospital, informing us that our mother was in critical condition. Samuel and I immediately headed to the hospital and simultaneously informed my brother that our mother was critically ill. Once at the hospital, the doctor explained her condition to us, and I held her hand. "Mom, are you okay? Please don't leave me behind just yet." Mom slightly squeezed my hand in return, but her feeble grip brought tears to my eyes. I was flooded with memories of her cheerful smile as I realized this was our goodbye. Samuel comforted me by patting my back as I wept. His eyes were also filled with tears, and he reassured me, "Mom has fought hard enough." Just then, the hospital room door opened. It was my brother and Karen, his wife. Karen entered the room and immediately mocked Samuel and me by saying, "Trying to look like the good kids, huh?" I was shocked by their cruelty, even at Mom's last moment. My brother and Karen started to speak near our dying mother.
"Hey Mom, you better tell us when you kick the bucket. We need the money soon."
"Since Scott is the eldest, your inheritance is ours. I always disliked you. You're such a boring old hag."
"Yeah, you were indeed a boring mother."
It's said that one's hearing lasts until the moment of death. It pains me that these could be the last words my mother hears. Angered by their disrespect, I sprung up and slapped my brother's cheek.
"What the hell are you doing?"
"Get out! Stop bothering Mom!" My tearful outburst seemed to take them aback.
"Alright, but we're definitely coming back for the money when Mom dies,"
my brother warned before he and Karen left the room. Overwhelmed with regret, I tightened my grip on my mother's hand and repeated, "I'm sorry." My mom opened her eyes slightly, gave me a weak smile, and lifted herself up a little to pass me a notepad. There was a phone number written on it. I asked, "Do you want me to call this number?" And Mom quietly nodded. Beneath the phone number, she had shakily written, "Thank you." I couldn't stop my tears upon seeing this. Later that day, Mom passed away. I acted as the chief mourner at her funeral. Normally, this role would be taken by the eldest son, my brother. But given his behavior, I wasn't sure what he would do, so I stepped forward. My brother refused to take on the responsibility, saying it was too troublesome, so I became the chief mourner without a fuss. The funeral had gone without a hitch, and my mother was now resting in a small urn. I held my mother's urn crying, while my Samuel was moved to tears watching me. My brother Scott and his wife Karen made fun of us, saying we were putting on a good child act, something I couldn't forgive. Once the funeral was over, we'd have to talk about money. My mother, a director at a large corporation, left behind a significant fortune. Even if Scott and I were to split it, it would be quite a sum. Scott and Karen seemed excited about the prospect, but that excitement quickly faded. The lawyer I hired read out my mother's will, stating that all her assets would be inherited to me and Samuel. "What? Scott's the oldest, right? Why isn't he getting any money?"
"Because that's what your mother wished."
The lawyer, whose number my mother had left behind, spoke plainly. Apparently, my mother had been preparing to leave her assets to me and Scott even before she passed away. The lawyer, seemingly quite competent, explained why my mother didn't leave anything to Scott and Karen and her will. It was clearly stated in the will my mother left behind that me and Samuel were there for her when she was struggling, whereas Scott and Karen did nothing.
We can just ignore the will. We're struggling here. We took out a mortgage on the house thinking we'd get an inheritance. Please give me half.
That's right. We'd be in trouble if we suddenly couldn't get any money. I took a deep breath before responding to my fussing brother and his wife. Absolutely not. Scott, Karen, neither of you were there when Mom was suffering. You didn't even visit her. I'll never forget how you showed up when she was weak and told her to hurry up and go to heaven. I also won't forget the horrible things you said to Mom in the hospital at the end. I won't give you a single penny of Mom's money. As I firmly responded, my brother and his wife kept begging for the money for a while, but they gave up and left after the lawyer told them to. When I told Scott not to contact me anymore because I didn't want to see him again, he shouted back, "Same here," but he soon contacted me asking for money again. Scott and Karen seemed to be in trouble, unable to pay their mortgage for the new house they bought, and seemed to have no choice but to rely on me. Scott kept working, but Karen quit her part-time job expecting to get Mom's inheritance, causing their household income to drop drastically. They had to lower their living standards considerably, but Karen couldn't stand it and they started arguing a lot. They thought they could manage by moving into the family home where I still lived, as it would mean no rent, and said they wanted to live together, but I refused. The ownership of this house had been transferred from my mother to me. Moving in without the owner's permission is not allowed, so when I explained that, Scott, who seemed to have been thinking of moving in by force, was at a loss for what to do. In the end, Karen, unsatisfied with their low standard of living, divorced. She took her child and went back to her parents' home, and seemed to have had to go back to her old job and work as a part-time employee. As for Scott, he tried to fix his inability to repay the loan by gambling, but ended up in a major loss. He got himself into a huge debt and is now living in a small, rundown apartment, scared of debt collectors. Several times, calls came asking for money, but each time I firmly responded, "I have no intention of lending you any money." Samuel and I are carefully maintaining and living in the family home where our memories of our mother remain. The inheritance we received from our mother, we've kept untouched in a separate bank account from the one we use regularly. It's the money that our father and mother worked hard to save. We made a promise to use it only if something were to happen to us, and today is the day of our mother's memorial visit. I had something I wanted to report to my mother at her grave, so I visited. "Mom, I'm pregnant. I'm sorry I couldn't let you hold your grandchild." I was told that my body was not very fertile, and I thought I might never be able to have a child, but I discovered I was pregnant a little while after my mother passed away. My mother knew until the end that I wanted a child, and she supported me. I think the fact that I was able to conceive a child, something I was having difficulty with, might have been a final gift from my mother.
Please watch over Alice so that she can give birth to our child safely.
Samuel says this and bows his head in front of the grave. The wind that passed through was comfortable, and I felt as if my mother had responded.
"Where are you right now? Are you safe?" Half shouting, I check on Jace's safety, who I suspect is at the scene of the fire. But on the other end of the phone, he dismisses me with an air of annoyance. "What's this all about? I'm at work, you know, and don't call me when I'm working." He grumbles and abruptly hangs up. There's no way someone could be casually working at the site of a fire. Upon realizing Jace isn't at his workplace, I am convinced of his betrayal. I decide to execute the plan I had been preparing for a while. My name is Julia Gomez, 29 years old. As a nurse working in a hospital, I confront numerous patients every day. Even now as an adult, I enjoy being of help to others, having always been told that I'm good at caring for others and I enjoy taking care of people. That's why I even think of nursing as my true calling. I have a beloved husband, Jace, whom I've been married to for 2 years, and we've enjoyed our married life in his company housing. I met Jace through a mutual acquaintance 3 years ago. At a drinking party where a few friends gathered, Jace, perhaps because of his shyness, got drunk at a fast pace and went down early. Whether it's because of my profession as a nurse or my inherent personality, I couldn't leave a drunk Jace alone and ended up taking care of him at my place, despite it being our first meeting. The next day, Jace, who didn't remember anything, said with a serious look, "I'll take responsibility," to which I burst out laughing. After explaining the situation to the confused him and assuring him that nothing inappropriate happened, he apologized sheepishly. That's how our relationship began, and we got married after dating for a year. Now, as we approach our 3rd year of marriage, we don't have any children yet, but I believe I can build a warm family with Jace. However, recently his work has been busy, his weekend work has increased, and he often comes home with a cold attitude. Moreover, even when we're sitting on the sofa watching TV together, he's constantly looking at his smartphone screen and sighing deeply. At first I wondered, did I do something to upset him? And I tried to recall my actions, but nothing came to mind. Gradually, I became worried about Jace's health, so I started researching well-balanced menus and preparing more substantial meals for his lunchbox and dinner. On that day, my hospital operates on a 2-shift system of day and night, and I was originally scheduled to work the night shift that day. However, I got a message from a colleague the day before asking me to switch from night to day shift, so I quickly changed to the day shift. I had originally told Jace that I was on the night shift, so I intended to tell him about the shift change, but things were hectic and I ended up contacting him on the day itself. I sent him a message saying, "I switched to the day shift today, so I'll cook dinner and wait for you," but the reply was slow to come. I thought he might be busy with work, and while I was focusing on my duties, a few hours later I got a reply saying, "Understood." Before, even during work, he would reply quickly and sometimes use emojis in his texts, but lately, his replies have been short. Is he that busy, or is this what happens after 2 years of marriage? Feeling a little lonely, I hurried home after buying ingredients at the supermarket after work, determined to cook a nutritious meal again today. Today's cooking was a great success, even by my standards. I dish up the finished meal, take a quick photo, and post it on my cooking account on social media. While I enjoy cooking for Jace, posting photos of my cooking on social media has also become something I look forward to. A few minutes after posting the photo, I get a notification on my social media. Haha, they're commenting again so soon. One of my cooking friends I met through my social media cooking account has been commenting a lot lately. It was refreshing to have a connection different from my work colleagues, and it made me happy. While I was doing that, Jace came home from work, and I, who had been waiting to have dinner with him, hurriedly reheated the food. "Welcome home, dinner's ready. Did you have a busy day again?" Thanks. Yeah, I guess so, I'm tired. But more importantly, you had a sudden shift to day work, huh? I see Jace, who's changed into his loungewear, sit down in his chair looking exhausted and bring over the reheated food. "Yeah, a colleague had an urgent matter. Sorry for the late notice." I also sit down at the table and start eating dinner, saying, "Let's eat." "No, it's fine. It was a sudden decision after all, but I'd like you to tell me earlier in the future. Sometimes I have plans to go drinking with colleagues." "Ah, I see. Got it." While saying that, I noticed that Jace hadn't been eating much since earlier. Is the food not very good? Could it be that it didn't suit his taste? Worried, I asked, and Jace's hand holding the fork stopped dead in its tracks. Then he opened his mouth with a somewhat awkward expression. "No, that's not it. I just don't seem to have an appetite. Sorry, I'll eat it for breakfast tomorrow." Jace, giving a forced laugh, said, "Thanks for the meal," got up from his seat and headed towards the bathroom. More than half the food was still left on the table, just as I thought. With a certain conviction, I followed Jace, who was heading to the bathroom. "Hey, are you feeling okay? You haven't seemed well recently. I'm worried. You should go to the doctor." Jace, brushing his teeth in the bathroom, rinsed his mouth and laughed off my words. "I'm fine. Oh, maybe it's because I haven't been exercising lately. I'm going for a walk now." Saying this, Jace tidied himself up and quickly headed to the front door. "I'll go with you," I said, but was gently turned down. Even more worried, I decided to secretly follow Jace, who'd gone out, just in case he collapsed on the way, so I could go help right away. Even though that's what I was thinking on the surface, somewhere in my heart there might have already been a different anxiety swirling around. That anxiety was soon confirmed as I started tailing him. Contrary to my concerns, Jace, who was walking spiritedly, stopped in front of a park a short distance from the house. He looked around and seemed to be contacting someone on his smartphone. Then, a white car pulled up. Jace approached the white car and chatted briefly with the person in the driver's seat. It's too dark to see clearly. As I got a little closer, I could see the person in the driver's seat. A young woman with long curly hair giving a seductive impression. The moment I saw her, my hand naturally pulled out my phone and activated the camera. Jace getting in the passenger seat, the woman laughing. I reflexively captured the scene in a photo, and by the time I had came to my senses, the car with the two of them had driven off. Surprise, along with confusion, suspicion, and various emotions swirled around in my head, leaving me unable to move from the spot. Then a message came from Jay saying, "I bumped into a friend, so I'll be home a bit late." A friend? By chance? The scene from earlier was burned into my eyelids, and I just couldn't bring myself to believe Jace's words. That night, Jace didn't come home until after 1 a.m. My anxiety had reached its limit when, with the tears spilling out, I thrust the photo I'd taken at Jace. Seeing the photo, Jace froze, then quickly laughed it off. "Oh, I just ran into a client salesperson while I was on my walk." "I was just giving advice, nothing more. Trust me." He looked at me with a sad expression like a victim, giving me the sense that he wouldn't allow any further questioning. After that, Jace's work became extremely busy, and I often had to work overtime on the days when I was on the day shift. Even amidst our conflicting schedules, I tried to find time to talk about the incident from before, but was dismissed with, "I'm tired." Overtime yesterday, working on a day off today. Really? During work, whenever my guard was let down, the image of Jace and that woman being close would come to mind, making me feel uneasy. Finishing my night shift, the morning sun was piercing to my tired eyes. I realized I had been neglecting myself recently due to all the worry and anxiety, so I stopped by a cake shop that was open early in the morning and bought a cake. With my mood slightly lifted, I left the store and took a different route home. There were many hotels in this area, and I often saw couples that looked like they were up to something, but maybe because it was early morning, there was a quiet atmosphere. While walking carefully so as to not damage the cake, thinking things like, "I have some tea at home, maybe we can drink it together," I caught a glimpse of a young man and woman coming out of a hotel on the opposite sidewalk. I casually glanced over and froze. There was Jace, squinting his sleepy eyes and smiling, and the woman with the long curly hair who was in the car that day smiling back at him. The cake I was holding slipped from my hand and squished as it hit the ground. In my whitening head, only the sense of mission to leave evidence remained. With trembling hands, I took out my phone and took a picture of the two of them, arm in arm and smiling at each other. The two of them captured in the snapshot looked just like a couple. My heart was pounding and I was breaking out in a cold sweat, as I thought Jace had been lying. In my view was the cake box that had fallen to the ground and the photo of the two. Staring blankly at them, I was thinking in the corner of my mind, I can't be with him anymore. One day, when the series of events had turned my suspicions about Jace into certainty, the word divorce took on a sense of reality. That day, I was working the day shift busy as usual. Just as I was handling a phone call, I heard sirens from far off, and could tell that fire trucks were passing through the neighborhood. It wasn't just one, but 2 or 3 in succession, which made me worried that there might be a fire somewhere. After finishing the call and taking a breather, 2 of my colleagues who had gone to the patient's room returned, talking about how scary it was. "Good work, what happened?" Thinking there might be some trouble, I asked, and they lowered their voices to tell me, "There's a fire at Company A. A patient we just passed in the hall said so." Company A? A fire? The moment I heard those words, a cold sweat trickled down my back. Excusing myself to my colleagues and gripping my phone, I quickly headed to a secluded spot. Company A, where the fire was reported, was where Jace worked. With a prayer-like feeling, I called Jace. As usual, I had seen him off to work that morning. Since the series of events, we hardly saw each other at home and talked less, but I never missed seeing him off in the morning. "Please pick up." As if my prayer had been answered, on the 3rd or 4th ring, I heard Jace's voice say, "Hello? Where are you? Are you okay?" To me, who was half shouting to confirm his safety, the man himself sounded annoyed. "What's the matter all of a sudden? I'm at work, you know, and don't call me during work hours." He grumbled and hung up after a single sentence. Only the end of call tone, a beeping sound came through my earpiece. From Jace's response, I was relieved to know that he wasn't caught in the fire, but I felt a big discomfort. There's no way he could be working normally at a place where a fire was happening. Furthermore, I was increasingly angered by his words and attitude, which seemed to trample on my feelings of concern. Jace is probably not at work right now. I saw him off to work as usual today, but the place he went to was definitely not his workplace. Since we got married, I might have unknowingly been seeing him off to another woman's place all along. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw his shimmering, long, curly hair. I made up my mind and made a call to a certain person from my clenched phone. After finishing my work safely, I hurried home and began to pack up the furniture and appliances around the house. Then the doorbell rang. Ding dong! When I opened the front door, it was not Jay standing there, but a friend from college. This friend knew about me and Jace's situation and had volunteered to help with this running away from home. Despite my sudden request for help moving my belongings from work, she readily agreed. "Thank you so much, I'll treat you to something next time." Feeling apologetic, I said, but she returned with a smile. "You've had it tough, haven't you? I'm always ready to help." I felt grateful for having such a good friend, a feeling that had faded recently, and my heart warmed. Together, we moved out the furniture and appliances and also loaded the clothes I had prepared in advance into the car. The room, now missing the furniture and appliances I had been using since my single days, had hardly any belongings left and seemed very empty. Looking at such a room, I asked myself again if I had any lingering attachments to my past life. No, I don't need it anymore. Without feeling any pull to stay, I briskly turned on my heel. My destination was an apartment near my workplace. Actually, on the day I saw Jace leaving a hotel with a woman, I went straight to a real estate agent in a rush. I wasn't sure about getting a divorce yet, but I had rented an apartment just in case. Pleased with my own decision, I checked the items I had moved into the apartment and began to unpack. Then, I remembered something and pulled out my phone. Holding the phone to my ear, I waited for the robotic voice guidance to start. Several hours later, after settling down from moving, while I was taking a break, I got a line call. Checking the display, I saw the name Jace. Exhaling deeply, I waited a moment before answering. "Hello?" "Julia, where are you? When I got home, it was empty and I can't use my phone anymore. What's going on?" Most of the stuff at home was originally mine, so I just took it with me. And as for the phone, it was under my name, so I canceled it. His frantic voice came through the phone, but I calmly stated the facts. "By the way, isn't your phone unusable?" "Well, I'm only able to use Line because I'm connected to Wi-Fi. No, more importantly, you said you took the stuff. You're not seriously running away, are you? This is a joke, right?" As I heard Jay still not understanding the situation, my irritation grew. "Are you seriously saying that? Don't tell me you forgot about the call this afternoon. Someone who's at work can't just keep working calmly when there's a fire happening, right?" Struggling to keep my voice from shaking with anger, I asked something I wanted to know for a long time. "Where were you and who were you with instead of going to work?" At my question, Jace took a breath and fell silent. After a brief silence, Jace, perhaps unable to withstand my silent pressure, reluctantly began to speak. "Look, the story about bumping into a female client while walking, it was a lie. The truth is, she's a colleague from work and I was at her place today." What Jace confessed was the story I had anticipated. He had been involved with the company receptionist, Savannah, for about 6 months. He had been seeing her on the days I worked the night shift. But recently, as Savannah became more demanding, he had lied about having to work overtime on his days off just to see her. And today, they both had taken paid leave and spent the day at Savannah's house. They only found out about the fire when Savannah's phone received a call from their office. Having confessed everything, Jay still pleaded over the phone. "I want you to forgive me." I thought, what a joke. "I'm glad to finally hear the truth from you, Jace. Despite our short marriage, I was doing my best to build a good family life." Over the phone, I could tell that Jace was trying to stop me, saying, "Wait," but I ignored him and said, "I want a divorce due to your infidelity. Let's discuss the issues of damage through our lawyers. Goodbye." Jace seemed to have something else to say, but seeing my firm stance, he finally gave up, murmuring, "Okay." Afterwards, the fire at Company A was reported in local news, becoming quite a big story. Seeing the news, I froze. The culprit behind the fire was none other than Jace's mistress, Savannah. Early in the morning, Savannah had snuck into the company's conference room, pulled a thread from the edge of a curtain, and lit it with a lighter. The fire quickly spread throughout the curtain, resulting in the conference room being burnt down. Fortunately, the building itself only suffered minor damage, but from the surveillance footage, it was clear that Savannah was the perpetrator. As for her motive, Savannah said that the married man she was dating wouldn't divorce his wife, and even her threats of exposing their relationship to the company had no effect. She claimed she thought she had to do something drastic. To be honest, I didn't understand why anyone would want to commit a crime just to be with Jace. However, according to Savannah's colleagues, she often complained about being lonely. Perhaps she envied the married man who seemed to have everything, thinking that having him would fill her own loneliness. Thinking this far, I suddenly realized that feeling lonely, even when you're with someone, is far more painful. After the divorce talk, I hadn't been in direct contact with Jace, but the divorce proceedings were advancing through our lawyers. In the meantime, I heard about what was happening at Jace's company. After After the fire broke out, Jace, who knew nothing about it, was apparently surprised when he heard the truth about the incident from the company's general affair representative. Savannah was arrested immediately, and news of their relationship spread quickly throughout the company. Unable to bear the gossip any longer, Jace resigned from his job. Hearing about all this, I felt a tiny bit of sympathy, but I mostly thought that Jace had brought this upon himself by choosing another woman. With that in mind, I went through the divorce process without much emotion, and we successfully divorced. The process was made smooth by the pictures of Jace's infidelity that I had taken on my phone. Additionally, I made sure that the alimony was properly paid from Jace's severance pay. Now that my connection with Jace was completely severed, I was enjoying living alone in my new apartment where I had become quite settled. Perhaps I had been neglecting myself by always putting others first. While continuing my job as a nurse, I started to enjoy cooking, which had been my greatest pleasure during my marriage with Jace, just for myself. In the morning, I opened the window of my apartment to let in the fresh air. Glancing outside, I saw a family of 3 walking together happily. Seeing that, I felt no regret at all, and rather, I felt excited thinking about my future. Just then, my phone buzzed. I returned to my room and couldn't help but smile at the screen. I had hit it off with someone I connected with on a cooking account on social media, and we had become close in no time. We had made a plan to cook together that day. Responding to the message saying, "I'll be there soon," I got started on preparing the meal we were going to cook.